Welcome to Part 2, Chapter 13, Theories of Personality. In this section, we're going to talk about Freud's model of the mind and how he conceived the mind. One of the things that, as you look here, is you can see that he conceives the mind as being composed of three different parts. He had a conscious mind, a preconscious mind, and an unconscious mind. And kind of the best way to look at it really is by using a kind of a picture of an iceberg. And as we always talk about with an iceberg, you know, the tip of the iceberg that you see above the water is just a mere part of the whole iceberg. And that's what he felt that the conscious mind was. And as we've talked about in chapter 8, is that being that awareness of our world around us and everything that's going on right now. And then he felt that the preconscious mind lies kind of just down below the surface here. It's something that's readily accessible. It's outside of our current awareness, but we can readily access it and bring it into consciousness. And then he felt that there was this much big, deeper part of the personality and composing the vast majority of our memories in our mind, that being the unconscious mind. Okay? So, also, within his personality, or his model of personality, he felt that there were three key components to our personalities, and they are the ego, the superego, and then the id. And in relationship to consciousness, preconsciousness, and unconsciousness, we can see that the ego is something that we're pretty much aware of. And the word ego meaning self. So this is our self-identity, our self-concept. And it's something that we're pretty much familiar with. And then lying just down below the surface of here, then we got part of our superego coming up and but look at the, where most of the ego is we're very much aware of it. Actually, what we're going to see down here, this part that's kind of down in the preconscious, later on we're going to talk about our defense mechanisms. The ego lives pretty much in the realistic, totally aware of, but there are some times that it does some things that lie just outside of our conscious awareness. And the superego comes up here through somewhat of our conscious awareness, but a lot of it is also down below and kind of working in the dark, so to speak. And then the id, the it of our personality, down here is where all our unconscious psychic energy is stored and turning and moving, and the id controls that. Okay, so let's take a look then at the id, the ego, and the superego in a little bit more detail. The id unconsciously strives to satisfy our basic sexual and aggressive drives. Operating on what is referred to as the pleasure principle, it demands immediate gratification. The id is something that's present at birth. It is the most primitive of the three components, and it's present at birth. And kind of like the minute that the baby gets hungry, it starts to cry and more or less, put out an appeal for food. Okay, and the minute it gets food, and then it calms down until it's hungry again, and then it cries, and then maybe it has a wet diaper or whatever, and it cries, to get changed. But it wants immediate gratification. They can't, look over at mom and say, "Mom, I see you're busy right now. I'll wait a few minutes before." No, the baby, literally, starts to cry a little bit and then turns up the pressure if mom doesn't respond, real quickly. And so that's the id, and it is not realistic in the sense that it really knows no reality. As we saw before in the iceberg picture too, is that the sexual energy source, the libido, is stored there. And this is one of those terms too that we hear a lot in TV talk shows or out on the internet and web, is about a person's libido, and somebody who is very sexually active or motivated, and we'll say, boy, they got a really strong libido. But that's that sexual drive. The scary part about it is that the id more or less controls and dominates the libido. And with the id being very impulsive and not knowing reality and seeking pleasure, you can see where the id can really get us in trouble unless there's something to help kind of keep the id in line. And thus emerges the ego. The ego is not present at birth, but it's going to develop basically around a year and a half to about 3 years of life. And it's going to start to emerge as the id starts to realize that it can't get everything it wants instantly, immediately. And the ego is going to come in, and it's the job of the ego really is to work with the id in that a sense that it doesn't try to block the demands of the id, but says, hey, id, you got a point. I understand this need, and hold on, and let's see if we can find something, that's appropriate to satisfy that need. Or, can you hold off for a little bit because we're going to be eating later or something like that. And the ego, though, functions under what we refer to as the reality principle, and that it looks at world. It has to look at the world very realistically and say, you can't have your way every single time, and you can't get it immediately. But the id doesn't work necessarily to block the ego doesn't work to block the id. It merely oftentimes just tries to delay gratification of the id until an appropriate time or object can be found to meet the needs of the id. Okay? From there, though, is that the ego is still going to find itself clashing. The id is very powerful. It controls the libido. It controls the energy source. It gives some of that energy up to the ego because it realizes that it has to learn to function within reality. And so it allows the ego to emerge. But there's always a constant battle or clash. Around our third year of life, and develops for about the next 4 years until about the age of 7, is the third and final mechanism or component of our personality that's known as the superego. And it provides standards for judgment. It's kind of our awareness of what is right, what is wrong. Sometimes they're referred to as the Jimmy Cricket of the mind. Let your conscience be your guide from Pinocchio, but kind of up there. When we do things well, the superego instills pride, and so it kind of gives us that sense of pride when we've done things well, and it pats us on the back, and that's a very positive aspect of it. However, when we don't do things well, okay, then it can use guilt and shame. And, then we feel bad about ourselves and we feel negative. But this is the way the superego works. Now, the superego clashes a lot with the id, where the ego, it merely tried to delay gratification of the id. The superego can set some pretty darn rigorous moral standards for us to follow. And such that you can't do this, you can't do that. No, you can't have that, you can't have this. But rather than trying to delay, that the superego just says, no, you can't have it. Now, you can imagine how you have this very impulsive, childlike id inside of us, and then you got that superego kind of like acting like the parent and says, no, you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't have this. And the ego's trying to sit in the middle and say, whoa, hold off, boys. Hey, id, what you want right now is not really realistic, and, we may get in trouble if we do that. And the superego say, no, you can't have it. And I say, superego, you're right. You got a point. We're going to get in trouble if we try to go for this. You're right. But there is a need, and let's see if we can't work together, to try to resolve that need. And that's where we see this interaction then between the id, the ego, and the superego. But the ego caught in the middle between these two very powerful forces who are struggling for power, and who's going to be the most powerful. Okay. From here then, we have our 3 major personality components, id, ego, and superego. We can see that the id is unrealistic, and that it really doesn't know reality, and that's why it gives way to allow the ego to come in, because it functions under the reality principle and is very realistic. The id, it's all about pleasure and instantaneous gratification of pleasure if it has its way. And the superego is for the most part unrealistic. There is some reality of it, particularly on the positive side, when it's instilling that sense of pride in us for things that we've done well. But where it functions under is the moral principle, and sometimes it can just really just go to the total other side of the morals, and that where the id is, I want this, and the superego is, no, you can't have that, and it's just no, 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 and it's interesting as we see these things we're talking about here is the emergence of these various components in their interaction. So let's take a look then. A well-balanced personality, according to Freud, if we think of the id, the ego, and the superego, is where they're all about equally powerful. No one is more stronger than the other, and there's a nice sense of balance in the personality. And this would be a good, healthy adult. And as we move into puberty, Freud was a big believer that most of the personality develops very early in life, in the first several years. So by about age 6 or 7, the id, the ego, and the superego are going to all have developed. And it's interesting that the superego finishes off about age 7, the same time that oftentimes we refer to for a child as the age of reason. And we start to hold the child responsible for right and wrong. Up until that point, we generally don't, saying that they don't have the ability to distinguish between what is right and wrong. But really, probably from about 3 to 7 years of age, we start seeing that the young child has enough mental wherewithal to start learning to make those distinctions, and we work to do that. So this is the balanced personality. As we said, the ego kind of serves two cruel masters. It's got to serve that impulsive, I want it now, immediate gratification id, and on the other side, he's got that superego that says, no, you can't have it, and is always kind of checking and trying to block, the impulses of the id. And then you got that, battle between the id and the superego, and I want this, no, literally a tug of war with the ego caught in between, trying to figure out, hey, calm down, let's manage this together. Okay. Let's take a look then at how we develop an imbalanced personality. Okay, the one that we see depicted down here. Here's our healthy personality. Here are our dynamics up here. Well, let's take a look at this one. Look at the size of the id. Okay, now this is showing that the id has a lot of power. Okay, and that it's much more powerful than the ego. And in fact, the superego, the id is not allowing the superego really to develop much at all. What does that mean for us in life? Is that it means that without the ego being strong and in the superego even being weaker, we are going to be very impulsive, and we're going to go after those things we want, and we're going to be very pleasure oriented. This here is the setting of a personality where we're dominated by our id that really starts to stack up to what we might refer to as a sociopath or a psychopath in society. And one of the key characteristics of them is they just do as they please, and they don't care who they run over, who they trample. As long as it feels good, they're going to go after it. They're not going to do things that generally are not going to feel good or be pleasurable to them. They're going to pursue those things that are very pleasurable. And you want to talk about the id being in control here and having significant influence over their personalities. It is there. And a lot of, sociopathic, psychopaths, what we talk about is them having to learn impulse control. Well, we're talking about, Freud would say, it's id control. And we need to work at developing the ego and developing, souping up that superego. Okay. And the next example here, what we have is imbalanced personality more or less the other way. Now, the id, for some reason, has given up a lot of its energy and allowed the superego to become stronger and more powerful. Now, the ego is still smaller than the superego, so it means that it's going to have a real struggle to try to control that superego because it's just much more powerful. And then we got the id down there. It's going to be still generating these wish-fulfilling images of things that it wants when needs arise, and it's going to want it now. But that superego is so dominant as that, no, you can't have it. You can't have this. You can't have that. You can't do this. And that is going to be be the life of the id. You still have those desires, you still seek those pleasures in life, but the superego is going to beat them down, suppress them, such that, it's kind of like no fun in life. But this is the way the dynamics go. So somebody who's over morally conscious and very moral driven, they are going to, could possibly have this imbalance here. So the desire really is to have this well-balanced personality up here if we can. Okay. When we take a look at this then, Freud believed that, as we said, that the personality develops in the first several years, and it's divided into what we're going to refer to as psychosexual stages. And that during each of these stages, the id's pleasure-seeking energies are going to focus on pleasure-sensitive body areas, which we refer to as erogenous zones. Okay? And we're going to come back in part 3 then and talk about Freud's notion of the psychosexual stages, one of the most controversial aspects of his theory, and the one that pretty much got him in trouble back in the Victorian period, for talking about all the sexual drives and things like that, when men and women weren't supposed to talk about sex at all in public. In fact, a woman would never even admit that she had a sexual drive, not even to her husband, for fear that she would be outcast in society. And so here he's going to come down the thing, starting to talk about all the sexual energy and the libido, and talking about the exploration, exploring the erogenous zones. Oh, he's going to set Victorian Vienna on its ear. And this is what we'll come back and discuss in part 3.